Oh, I am. I am.
There ain't no cut. There ain't no cut.
We're waiting on one board member to rejoin us, and then we'll reconvene the meeting.
There's more agendas here if anybody didn't get one. There was 4 that were passed out that didn't have the second page through them. So is that a...
Okay, at this time, we'll reconvene the special meeting of the Waterloo Board of Education. Before we move into the business, we're on item 5 on the agenda, heading to 6. But before we get to 6, I wanted to take a minute to congratulate Mr. Todd Carpenter, our treasurer. Todd's been our treasurer for how many years, Todd? 18 years. And all 18 years, he's had absolutely spotless office. We're very proud of that. Todd does an excellent job. He keeps us updated with all the financial information. He's very, very accurate. His projections seem to hold true when we look at when they become actual. They're very close to what he projected. We're very fortunate to have Todd. The auditor of the state, Dave Yost, recognized that and has invited Mr. Carpenter to join the auditor of the state's regional advisory board. So that is quite an honor, and we're very proud of Todd, and I just wanted to thank him for his effort and his years of service and always doing a great job and keeping us out of, we always know that the numbers he gives us are accurate and we can count on them. So that's a tremendous benefit. So thank you very much, Todd. We appreciate that. Now, the reason we were here tonight was originally intended to be a joint meeting between Waterloo and the Waterloo Board of Education and Field to discuss the opportunity for shared services. Shared services, namely sharing a superintendent. Over the last several years, Waterloo has been in very difficult financial times. As part of that, trying to save money, trying to keep as much money as we possibly can in the classroom, we've looked at shared services with other school districts, and we've just never been able to make it work out for other positions, not for superintendent, but other positions with neighboring school districts. That just has never worked out to where it would be cost effective and beneficial for a lot of the school districts, and we've never entered into it before. A while ago, we were approached by Field to talk about having shared services, about what would we be interested in. So the board, we're always willing to listen. We want to, anytime we owe it to the community that we think that if we can save money and we can stretch a dollar, get more money back into the classroom, well, then we certainly owe that to this community and these students to do that. And one of the things the board says right away, all the board members were quick to agree, well, if we do that, we need to have a public forum, a public discussion, so that the community understands how that would look as well as us. Because I think if we were to go through here and talk to all the board, ask each board member and ask each person here, what is involved with sharing a superintendent or sharing any position, I think we'd probably get about as many different opinions as what are in this room. So anytime you have that kind of situation, the most important thing you can do is back up and make sure everybody understands. We all understand. We're all thinking on the same page. We all have the same understanding of what that would look like. So this forum is the first tonight to do that. And again, we have not agreed to anything. It's just everything is exploratory at this point. But we felt it best to get the community involved in this exploration and go right along with us, so they have the same information we do. In doing so, we planned on having Field here tonight, and then on Thursday, we both are going to be, Waterloo and Field are going to have a meeting at Field School District. Unfortunately, there were some procedural items that didn't happen correctly for Field, notifications, those kind of things of public board meetings. And so they were legally permitted from having their entire board here tonight, or even three of their board members here tonight, or else they would have been, frankly, probably, I don't want to speak for, I'm not a lawyer, I don't play one on TV or none of that good stuff, but they probably would have been in violation of the Sunshine Law, which nobody, obviously, they don't want to do. We don't want to see them do that. So the decision was made. We found out about this about 1, 2 o'clock this afternoon. The decision was made, something we thought about canceling the meeting, and I said, well, hey, that's not fair to all you guys that plan on coming. So we decided to go forward with the meeting and do our best to get the information, and we're going to have another meeting over at Field on Thursday. And if need be, we will have another meeting here at Waterloo. That's not, that's not a problem. So that's kind of how we got to where we're at right now. Within the realm of what was allowed, Field was allowed to have 2 representatives here, in the audience speaking, working as, I don't think, well, let's just say they have two board members here, Mr. Larry Stewart and Mrs. Allison Wetzel out here, up in the corner. So thank you for coming. Appreciate it. And that, the way the meeting's going to work tonight is we have Maria Markakis is here. She's going to serve as the moderator, and she has some general topics of discussion that she's going to go through, excuse me, and ask board members on that. And then we're also going to, at the end of the evening, we'll have an open, excuse me, the opportunity for the community board or the audience to ask questions also. So at this time, we'll go ahead and we'll turn it over to Maria and go from there. Thank you.
Could we clarify to Thursday night that everything is in place the correct way? So that meeting will be both boards of education.
Yes.
All right, good evening. My name is Maria Markakis, and I am the attorney for both the Field School District and the Waterloo School District. And with that being said, I just wanted to make it clear that if the districts choose to pursue a shared superintendent agreement, myself and my firm will assist with drafting the agreement, but we won't be involved in negotiating the terms of the agreement. And in doing that, if the districts become adverse to one another, then both districts will need to retain other separate counsel under our legal ethics. Once the districts, if they ever get to the point where they're adverse to one another, I can't represent both. My firm and I cannot represent both. We would have to step out and refer the districts out to other counsel. But in this exploratory phase, and also if we do decide to pursue this, actually drafting the agreement, I can assist with. So I've done some research, and I came up with 6 areas that I think need to be addressed in determining whether this is a good solution for both Waterloo and Field school districts. And with the first topic I have listed here is the compensation of the shared superintendent, the cost of the shared superintendent, the cost of the shared superintendent's benefits, and the cost-benefit analysis. So we can just start with the first topic, with just the cost of a shared superintendent. How is that going to work? Is each district going to pay 50% of his salary and benefits, or is it going to be divided differently? Is he going to be employed by one district and continue to be employed by Waterloo, and then Waterloo would charge Field for a portion of his salary? So that's the first topic. Anybody wants to? What do you guys think as Waterloo board members?
My personal thoughts on it are, I think as far as the salary is concerned, it should be paid by both. Because that way, when people are looking at our 5-year plan, they're looking at that actual number, not a reimbursement of that. So that way, but as far as healthcare, I know that probably can't be done that way. So I would say, as far as salary goes, that way, and then all the other stuff would be billed back to Field District, and they would compensate for half of that.
So you're thinking more of a 50% split between the 2 districts?
I don't know. I don't know how.
Can we split out the salary to where the salary is just split at 50% and then have everything else run through the district and charge back?
Yeah. However, both boards
Is that what
agree
we
to.
were?
We discussed that or the administration. Because Field District has twice as many students as ours, it's been brought up that we would do it based on number of students. So instead of 50-50, it might be 60, well, it would be 60-40 or 65-45, whatever everybody agrees to. But yes, I think the salary should be split and then the other should be.
And that is always an option too. Do we split it evenly, or do we split it based on number of students? That's certainly an option.
Any other thoughts on this topic? The next topic I have is the role of the shared superintendent. So what is the impact on the roles of other administrators at both districts? If he's going to be splitting his time between 2 districts, what is the burden on the other administrators that are underneath him to support the district when he's away from the other district? What's the shared superintendent time expected at each district during regular school hours? So it's expected to be at one district 1 week 3 days, and then the next week 2 days, and alternating. Will the shared superintendent have an office at both districts? The fact that both administrative assistants will need to be able to communicate with the superintendent via electronic mail, phone service, and cellular phone service. And if unavailable for immediate response to an issue, the administrative office assistants should be instructed to contact the next organizational person able to respond to a specific issue until such time that the superintendent may be available. And then what are the expectations in terms of attendance at school-sponsored functions? So those are all just different topics that I've seen under the role of a shared superintendent. So what are you guys thinking on Waterloo's behalf?
In my mind, I'm envisioning, we don't have we don't have a lot of extra administrators or extra staff. I don't know how field is situated. We don't have curriculum directors. We share our special ed coordinator is somebody we get part-time from the county. We have our cafeteria and our transportation supervisor is a part-time position that has been molded into one position. We just don't have a lot. We have 2 principals currently for grades K through 12 with no assistant principals or dean of students or anything like that currently. We do not have administration on staff that we can shift a lot of load to. For us, for this to work and be feasible, I mean, we have to, I mean, there might be a few things here and there, but there's just not that, we don't have, and everybody there, I mean, we've got 1,200 students, over 1,200 students, we've got 2 administrators, and next year, that's going to become even more difficult because the state evaluation criteria is changing, and that's going to become just, some people may call it a nightmare to actually get through and take care of, meet the state requirements for the evaluations. So we, and anybody else, please speak up, but, and Andy, if I'm misstating, please jump in, but I don't see where we have a lot of additional staff to pick up things that Mr. Hill wouldn't be able to do. Obviously, in emergency situations, there would be a chain of command, which there is now anyhow, where things would get handled, but again, we're 8-10 minutes apart, so, and from each other in the event of emergencies. So that's kind of how I see working with, shedding the load. I mean, it's basically one of those things where Andy would still be going pretty close to 98% or whatever that number is of what he's doing now. Right? I mean,
Yeah, I would agree.
That doesn't make much sense that you do 98% twice in 2 districts. Because are we really, is this going to be a part-time job? I guess the question, is it a part-time job at 2 districts? It's not. It's a full-time job at 2 districts. He's going to do the same amount of work at field as he's doing at Waterloo. 98%.
I guess the whole point of this discussion tonight is to find out what it's going to be. I mean, you know, this is new to us, and it's I looked at it. I graduated from Fordham in 1977. In fact, I see a guy sitting right there beside you that was one of my mentors, your dad, and when this whole thing came about, it kind of hit home with me too, because this is, you know, my parents still live in Brimfield. I mean, that's, my home is there. Well, I live here, but I mean, my heart is over there too. It's part of it anyway. And I don't know, I just see this as an opportunity. We both have our share of financial problems.
Sure.
And everything else. So I was taught, you know, some of the greatest moments in my life, some of the best memories I have are in the halls of those buildings. If we can help each other, let's try to do that.
That's true, and believe me, the people from field who've been here have been attending a lot of meetings. We've been kind of ahead of our board on this discussion.
Right.
Okay? And what I've been stressing, being a board member, is that if you guys think this is the great, it might be a great solution. This solution might work wonderfully. But the problem I see is that it is being implemented at a point at field where there's been no due diligence, no research. We're being told today that you were approached a while ago by the field board. We're being told by our board at the meeting last week, they haven't discussed shared service at all. Okay, I think I'm quoting people in this room. You guys might be right, I don't know, we don't know. So my point is, it looks like to the community in the field that this is a knee-jerk reaction to fill a gap while our board is going to change direction in November because a majority or a percentage of the three that are voting in one direction are leaving. They're not coming back. We might have one run, but the rest of them said they're not running. So if you want it to work, it's not going to have a good chance to work if it's implemented now with the current structure of the board, because we're going to be 3 months into a school system or school year with very little time to get any experience or any exposure to see how it's going to function, and a new board's going to come in probably running to reverse it without even giving it a chance. Okay, so I'm not going to sit here and tell you that 5-year plan is not going to work. I'm just telling you, if you want to give it a chance to work, it needs to be done at field level from a board who has some time to support it. This current board is not going to have time to support it. Okay, they've already, we know that one of the three is not going to run for a re-election, possibly two, so the dynamics are going to change. Okay, and in my view, this is the same board that came in and got rid of our last superintendent. So we have a habit of bringing in boards to change the superintendent position. Okay, so to expect that not to happen in November is just naive. So instead of setting anything up long-term, I just don't think it's going to get a shot. I'm not going to sit here and tell you it doesn't work. I'm not going to tell you you don't have the authority to do it. I'm just going to tell you that the voters are going to look at it and say, we're changing the board, so that Waterloo thing is going to be a reason to vote against it. Okay, that's the opinion, and I think a lot of people would feel there's a reason why we have 100 people showing up at these meetings lately, because they're concerned about that. We're going from 2 full-time positions to 1 part-time position in a 4-year period, and we can't recover from that. We won't find the money in our budget if it doesn't work to go find a full-time superintendent. Now, if we're paying $60,000 a year, we're going to have to find 120 in our budget to do that, and I think that's going to be a struggle for us in the future. So my opinion is give it to a board that's going to have a chance to support it, let them make the decision, do the due diligence all summer, do the due diligence into November, give us some real numbers, and then let a board who's got some time under their belt make that decision. Okay, I hope I didn't get too far off topic, Maria, but.
The thing is, I mean, the gist of us being here is to make it a win-win situation. We're not in trouble here. We have a very stable community, a very stable board, a very stable direction, and we're here at the benefit of basically what the agenda is coming out of the state. Columbus is very adamant about at least keeping open the possibilities of looking for these shared services. It's a win-win situation for both communities, but you have to realize that if you're wanting 100% of a superintendent, then we need to be looking in another direction. Quite frankly, we're very stable. We don't need the disruption. But if you're going to wait until you get a new board, you're going to be a year behind. And from what I read in the paper, you're already in financial issues. So how is it going to be better off if you're not proactive and start the process right now?
Because it's just going to get reversed.
It might, but also the other thing too is whenever we hired a new superintendent, and we had a lot of people that didn't care for the old one, so we were working with that, and so he had a lot of work to do. And if you survey the people here at Waterloo of what Andy did in the first 6 months, a lot of minds were changed in that 6 months. And I know it's not a long time. I agree with you. But, and Now, probably embarrassing them, but in that 6 months, just meeting the community members, meeting the staff, meeting the people that were involved in Waterloo was something that he did, and that was something he was dedicated to doing.
And I don't doubt you.
I'm just
I
saying,
think
in
Ed
6
might be a
months,
great
that might
staff.
happen. In 6 months, that might happen.
Can I
So
say-
if it doesn't, there's always outs on all this stuff, too, so, go ahead.
You'll have to forgive us, because until tonight, we've had zero information on this situation. I'm grateful that you're having an open air meeting, so that we can find out what might happen. I understand that Mr. Hill is an outstanding person. It's not about a person. It's about the mechanics of our district, and that's what we're fighting. We've gotten zero information about why our present superintendent has been forced out of the position. So you have to understand that we've gone through quite a bit of emotional stress in the past, I'd say, year and a half. We also have never gotten direct, honest answers from our board. And because of that, the confidence in the community is falling apart. It's not typical of what the field communities are like, because the community's been starting to rally around their districts. So it's been a matter of, I'd say, operation. So timing would be difficult at this time. It's not personality. I'm grateful that you're having this open air meeting. I'm grateful to hear that you're just beginning the process. I think most of us have been under the impression that we've had this process ready to sign a contract.
No.
I compliment you, Waterloo Board, very much.
How long have you been in education?
I was in education over 35 years.
Because last year was
And
my
at 3 different
35th.
levels, and including Maplewood.
You're a great coach, I think.
Well, thank you. But, you know, this is a very serious issue, and I mentioned people, I'm retired and have been for 10 years, but I'm still in the fight for one reason. And you know what that reason is, and I'll have to state it. So I just compliment you, and you're gonna hear some emotions coming out because of what we have not gone through, and that's what you're providing tonight. I just compliment you for that.
So, not just mention here too, you know, kind of hits on what you said. You know, our board is very much in the initial stages of discussion and what this would really look like. There's no answers that are in anybody's mind now in terms of what we've formed with how this would actually work. And that's why this dialogue with both boards and what happened on Thursday is really important. At the same time, the community feedback from both communities is just as important. And so, you know, we just have to keep in mind, as we look at the points that you bring up, are things that our board is going to have to very much consider. You know, as we move forward, having that understanding of what you're sharing is very important for decisions that we're all going to have.
Before this meeting's over with, though, Mr. Hill, are you gonna let us know what your thoughts and feelings are? I know it's early in this, but let us know what you're thinking. Okay.
You know, we're so early into this. I mean, there are still questions from our standpoint, you know, and we're concerned about representing our district. You know, they elected us to represent them, and it's very important that we do have these discussions in the community, you know, emphasis. And, but we do know that education is not going to stop. So, you know, as time goes on, you know, you're not doing your district any justice by you know, trying to, you know, address every minute issue. You have to take opportunities when it arises. And all I say is that it's the same for us. It's a good opportunity for us to look at shared services and what it means. Don't discount it until we've really looked at it, until we know what it entails. Maybe we find out through this process it's not something we're interested in. We just know that it's an interesting opportunity that is being pushed from the state level. There's a lot of school districts in this state, and from a financial standpoint, you can see where it would be financially plausible that people start looking for shared services. And that's not just between school boards. I think it can be, we can reach out, school boards can reach out to a number of different, either, county or state agencies. So,
I had the opportunity last night, 3 schools, there's 3 schools right now sharing one superintendent. It's Rittman, Warrenville, and there's a southeast over there, not our southeast, but over in Greentown. And I had an opportunity to talk to one of their board members last night. I talked to him for about an hour. And just talking about, this is so new and such a new concept to us and even me, because I'm pretty much a new board member myself. This is starting my 2nd year. What it's like to share a superintendent. And there were some rough spots. I mean, it's just, with everything else, it's always going to be rough spots. But one of the big things that, it even come out today saying that this new school funding formula that our governor has is just, I don't even know a nice word to call it, but it doesn't even look like it's going to make the budget. So, we're kind of in limbo as far as our money goes as well. But he said with having those, all those schools together, there's so many opportunities for better contract bartering as far as like copying machines. And he said he brought 2 companies in. The 2 companies, one company represented Rittman, the other one Orville. Sat the guys in an office and said, we want 40 machines or whatever the case may be between the 2 schools. Best price gets it. So these guys worked, and they saved a ton of money alone, he said, just on that. And he did the same thing with, the board did the same thing with their office supplies. All right? It was the best deal. So instead of supplying one school, you're supplying 3. They share some administration. They also share some teachers. Where we've been kind of hurt is our kids with the learning disabilities. We haven't been able to pay as much attention to them as we would like to, just because of the $2 million worth of cuts we made in the last year and a half. And he said that, because one school was a little bit bigger than the other, they would, share like the special needs teacher would be at one school 2 days and the other one 3 days. So actually, with just one salary, they were able to help these kids. With the technology that we have now too, we got a camera, we're streaming this meeting live on the internet right now. There's technology out there that, let's say Field had an AP class that we wanted to have. It would take some work around to do, but, we're innovative and smart people here. You put a camera in that class and your teacher could be teaching your kids and our kids at the same time. So, there's a lot of possibilities. There's a lot of great possibilities. There's a lot of things that we could fail miserably in too. But I certainly think that whether we do it with Field or whoever, I think this is the future. I know that the property owners are getting tired of paying more taxes. I don't know where else we're gonna go for money. So if we start gearing ourselves to think like this, and the guy from Rittman, he said it was the greatest thing they ever did. And they've never looked back. So, I don't know. The unknown is scary to everybody.
And you had a question, I'm sorry.
Does Phil currently not have a superintendent? I thought from what he said that was the case.
I don't know the exact stats at this point.
31st.
Yeah, I was just curious, is this whole idea just a financial thing? Because when I hear shared services, shared this, shared everything. I hear also watered down, mediocre services that don't really solve anyone's. I hear what you're saying, Steve, about the copiers, but, you know, I'm thinking you could do that without a shared superintendent. I'm thinking that you take away Mr. Hill from Waterloo, where we don't have a whole lot of staff, and you're taking him away, his time, his energy, his expertise, and I hear also problems at Field that I'm not saying that they can't solve their problems, but I hear us being pulled into that, and I don't see where this is such a wonderful thing at all. I don't know, if
You
that
brought up a lot
can
of
all
good
be.
points about shared service, but they're all on the experimental lower end of the scale. They're not right at the top of the leadership position. Sharing some services within the district is not something you can't experiment with throughout the district.
Well, it started with the superintendent, just kind of trickled down.
Well, for us, that's a scary place to start, because our ship is not sailing smoothly. All right, remove the captain 3 days, 1 week, and 2 days the next, is not really, and it would drag, like you said, it would probably drag you into some of our dysfunction.
I'm gonna be honest with you, that's a concern. I mean, if you were sitting here in my spot, and I was sitting out there, you would probably say the same thing, right? That is a concern, because, you know, you hope everybody's doing great. You want Field, you want Woodstown, you want everybody, you want all the school districts to succeed. And it seems like we all have our time in the jar, right? Where we have some issues. And unfortunately, right now seems to be Field's time. And we've gone through 3 years of very tough financial times, and we just passed a levy, so we're kind of coming out of that. Things are going real well for us. I personally have always thought that the superintendent helps set the identity of your school district. And I don't know, that's kind of like, you know, to me, if you think about it, they kind of just their personality, what they're doing, the way they approach things, kind of sets your identity. Can you set the identity? Can one person set the identity for 2 school districts? Is a question. You know, those kind of things. But one of the reasons that we were hoping to have both boards here is because, you know, Maria spent a lot of time and effort putting together some very good questions, some very good thoughts, but she asked them, and we're kind of like, okay, really, you know, it's important to hear how Field is thinking about these things. Maybe they're, you know, we're over here and they're completely over here, and we have these 2 meetings and there's no way we could get back together. Or maybe we find out, hey, we're both pretty close together, in the communities in both school districts are you know, within tolerable range. I mean, you know, that's kind of what we're trying to do here, is to find out, are we on convergent paths, are we divergent, where are we at? So, but I agree. Getting drug into what's going on, you know, I mean, I've been on the board 24 years. I've been through an awful lot of things, and it's, you know, and you just time. Yeah, it takes time to get through those things. That's all you can say. And I would like to see Waterloo stay very clean during that whole time, because, you know, we're doing things. We've worked very hard to try to get things on the right track. Financially, we're okay for 5 years now. You know, those things are going on. So that is a concern. I saw a hand back there from before.
Brian, I have a question for the board, and it kind of comes off of what Jill had spoke about. If we do go to shared services, and we've already spoken here how bare bones we are here at Waterloo, we don't have anything extra. We have, you know, we're sitting here right now covering, you know, the 5 through 12 building, you know, and as you said, what they're imposing on us for the new teacher evaluation systems. What my concern is, administrators are needed in a district just as much as teachers are needed in a district to that extent. So I'm worried the savings we might realize for this are going to have to turn around and be put into some more of that support so that our district still runs efficiently as possible? And then, how much do we lose of trying to put it back in the true education of the teachers in the classroom? How much are you looking at savings that would allow our district as far as boots on the ground in the classroom? Because that's, of course, the hit we've taken over the last several years in order to keep our district solvent and in order to try to do the very best job we can to make Waterloo as good as it's always been. And so now I'm kind of worried in that sense. Let's face it, the chain of command that you talked about, Andy's always been able to be here, fill in as needed, you know, for whatever reason. And now if we lose him and he's over 10, 15 minutes away, you know, we've got to fill the gaps somehow. Those gaps have to be filled. So is the savings possibly going to be burned up because of that, of the gaps we have to fill? That's one worry that I have. Or are we going to be able to put it directly into a classroom?
That's a very valid concern, and I share that concern. I think everybody up here, I don't want to speak for the other board members, I think everybody has that same concern. And the way I put it is, and I hate to use numbers, let's just say, if we're going to save $1 by doing this, and we got to hire somebody else for 90 cents, it's not Andy, it's not worth it for us because we've hired somebody that won't do as good a job as what Andy will, and we haven't saved enough. If that makes sense. So, I mean, that's a valid concern, that's a very valid point. It's you know, I think that's some of the things that we are, that's why it's so important to try to get all the cards out on the table kind of thing, and see where we're going. There was a gentleman in the, yes, sir.
You know, as a taxpayer in the community, coming into the community, back to the community, you know, Andy's, from what I've heard and read and been involved in now that I've been out here and whatever, friends and family live out here, he's done a heck of a job in turning this school district around. And I think that you're going to see that the public, I mean, I'm here because I think it's a bad idea. I think you're taking him away from this community, this school building that he's turned around. She made a comment that, you know, in the however many years he's been here, his first 6 months, he implemented a bunch of different changes. His changes worked. And, okay, now that aside, you know, I mean, I don't personally know him face to face, but, you know, now we're going to throw the stress of a whole other school district, a whole other buildings on him. You know, what's going to stop him from a year now saying, I've had enough, I'm walking away. Now, Waterloo loses an excellent superintendent, and so does Field, and it didn't help Field get above and beyond out of their financial debt. I feel bad for Field. I hope that they can get themselves out like Waterloo did. You know, it took a lot to get this levy passed this last time, but I think if you pull him out of here, you're not going to get any more levies passed because the people are going to see that, well, you're shipping your superintendent, your principals, your teachers to other school districts. These people voted for this school because of a lot of what he does. Now you're going to start pulling him out, let alone, it's probably going to hurt the board members because the board members are going to get voted out if this school goes downhill. Because I would push for it. I'd push to have people voted out of here if they let him take another job to run another school.
The board sat up here when this idea came up. One of the very first things out of our mouth was we need to be transparent. We need to be open to the community. So, you know, voting us out or whatever.
Well, I'm not making that threat. I'm just saying, I think you're going to overstress him, and what's going to stop him from walking away from both school districts in a year from now?
I'll let you go ahead and address that.
Hypothetically. I think this is a good time for Andy to say his thoughts on it, because I think some people think that it's a forced thing on him, some people think that it's just our way of saving money. I think we need to hear what his thoughts are, because I think this is a good time, don't you think?
Yes, I do.
So my thoughts on the issue is we talked about are, I believe, I'll start by saying this. I believe that the way that the state is set up and the way that things are going with financing public education, I think that this type of thing is inevitable. I think that this is probably more realistic than consolidations. Some of you in here went through those back when they did the consolidations in the sixties, and they cut down from numerous school districts in the state to where we're at now. But in my experience, up in the diocese of Toledo, where I work, and then in public education here in Portage County the last 6 years, unless the state actually takes an active role, I don't personally think consolidation will happen, because I think it's too hard for a community to come to grips and say, this is what needs to happen, we don't have the money to do this. There's too much vested interest and people are too tied to it, and that's good. I'm not saying that's a bad thing at all. But I don't see any leadership from the state coming out and forcing districts that can't pay for things to be able to do anything besides go back to the voters. And what's in the Ohio Revised Code now is, you're gonna consolidate, your community has to vote on it and approve it, and the community that you're gonna consolidate with has to vote on it and approve it for that to happen. So I just don't see that being a realistic thing when people talk about consolidation. So I believe the shared service thing, something has to give somewhere. I believe the shared service thing is probably what it gives. And while this isn't unique, there are examples. Steve mentioned one, there's another one somewhere in central Ohio area that I know of, and maybe more. While it's not unique, I would rather have us, Waterloo, be on the cutting edge of this and have a chance to shape what this looks like than to have this reactively done to us because factors are out of our control. And when I look at funding where we're at, it just took us 2.5 years to pass a levy that we started off asking 8 mills for before we lost 10% funding from the state. After numerous public forums, we came back. And eventually on the 6th attempt, I think the sixth I was involved in, 7 since 08, finally passed, but we passed something that was much smaller than truly what was needed. But we did that because that's what the community told us to do. Make it as small as you can for as short a period of time as you can. And so I look at these $2 million plus in cuts that we've done over the last couple of years, and like I've told you numerous times, I felt like a big part of my job during the time I've been here has been to come to you and say, okay, here's the option that I think least impacts our students in a negative way. So I'm suggesting this one to you tonight. Yeah, I mean, that's what I feel like it's been. And now we pass a levy, and then 3 days later, they release spreadsheets, and it shows that if his proposed budget goes through the way it's set up, and in 2 years he phases out the guarantee, we're gonna lose $1.1 million. And our levy that we just passed is only bringing in, starting next calendar year, $949,000. So we're gonna be worse off in 2 years than we are before we pass that levy, if that proposal goes through. So I look at all of that stuff, and I think in our case, we're 6.5 people above state minimums with staffing. We knew that we didn't have enough money to cut to get through the next time we had to cut if we wouldn't have passed that levy. So where do we do these things? And so with all of that being said, I personally would be in favor of this because I look at this as a way for our district to be creative. And I look at it as a way where we can put resources back into the classroom. The money that's saved, I think, should go right back in, even if the state budget doesn't go through the way that it's proposed right now. I would suggest to the board that, you know, we've made as many cuts as we possibly can, and while we need to stay within the 5-year forecast that we had out there with us when we passed the levy and get that money through the 5 years we promised this community, do our best. That with factors we can't control, we can't do anything about that. But I would suggest that any internal changes that we can make moving forward that save us money that we weren't expecting should be plugged right back into the classroom, because that's where we need it. And we've seen that we went from excellent distinction to excellent to effective. And while you can't say that that's the only reason that happened, I think anybody would be hard pressed to say that that's not a major contributing factor when you look at what's been done here over the last 2 years. So I personally do not feel like if this were to go through, I in no way, shape, or form feel like this is something that's being pushed on me. I think that this is an opportunity for Waterloo, and quite honestly, I think it's an opportunity for field. Whether take the person out of it, I think just in general, the whole concept is an opportunity. I think it's one that Waterloo could work through. I don't know enough about field to be able to say that, especially listening to some of the current circumstances that you described. But I think if it doesn't work in this scenario, I think it's something we continue to pursue. You mentioned earlier, we've explored over the last 2 years other opportunities. We explored transportation in neighboring districts 2 years ago, or 2 years ago. It just didn't happen. We had sit-down discussions. We were looking, being myself and Todd, with Southeast with food service last summer. And I quite honestly thought we were going to get a deal set there to share their person, and they fell for it. They didn't make any sense. It was in that case, it would have been, we would have been losing out to do that financially. So, I guess that's where I stand. I think logistically speaking, do things have to change? Yeah. Obviously, like you mentioned, you can't be and do everything in 2 places that you're doing in 1. Where do I see those changes personally? I think a lot of those changes are things that happen outside of the normal day that involve extracurricular activities and stuff. A lot of the reports and different things that are done at one district are easy to duplicate and do it a second once you know how to do it the first time. A lot of the correspondence that you get from the state level and different things, duplications. Every district's though unique. I guess fields, the job I would do in the field would probably look different day to day than the job that I would be doing here, just because there's different needs in both districts. But I think where it comes in, I obviously can't be at 2 football games at the same time. I can't be going to every single meeting in the community here that I go to, or if I have another community that I need to be doing that stuff with too. And so I think a lot of that is where those trade-offs happen, and that's why this dialogue is important, because maybe that's not what you want. Those realistically have to be worked out if this is going to be pursued any further. And then I also think that at least initially, I think if you start in a new place, there's always a lot more time to invest. And I personally think a lot of that stuff, for me, would be stuff that would have to happen outside of normal hours, weekends and evenings. And that's a responsibility that I understand becomes an extra burden on me, and it's okay. This job's never been 8 to 4 or 8 to 5 job, and it never will be. There is one district or 2 or 3 like the other guy. So I guess those are my thoughts.
Another thing that, we're new to this calm effect that we have right now. We're always holding our breath because we know at some point something's gonna happen. I mean, we just passed the levy after 7 attempts, which for us was huge. But at the same time, we've gone through a lot of growing with, like you're saying, about not trusting the board. We don't know how it happened, but somehow we went through that stage where nobody trusted us either. And the voice of the board comes through the superintendent. And I think that that helped us a lot, because just with meetings and openness and communication and all of that, it really helped us as a board to have other people trusting us again. We haven't done anything differently. It's just how we were perceived. So I think that that's one other thing. But at the same time, we're the same way. A lot of our requirements when we hired a new superintendent were, we wanted them visible, we wanted them at things, we wanted the community to know him, and that is huge for us. And that is probably one of the biggest things whenever people are rumoring out there, because the rumor mill went a lot faster than, we didn't even know things, and people were telling us things. So I think that's the thing that people worry about. As soon as they heard that the superintendent at Field wasn't going to be back, they were worried that the Field was going to steal Andy full-time and we needed to do something to keep him. So, I mean, that's how that rumor mill works, but that has not been, that's not been the conversation at all. And I think that whenever all of that happens, you just have to be stay calm, you know, work with the facts. I mean, we just made our middle school principal, our middle school and high school principal, which is new. I mean, we have 100% faith in him, but, you know, that's new to us too. So as far as administration-wise, we are low administration-wise. You know, we're counting on all of that working the way it should, but we could have changes too. So we don't know, we're a little nervous about this happening at the time that it's happening too, for other reasons. So none of us are set on anything at this point. We're just trying to gather information and figure out how it's gonna work.
And one other thing I do want to add here, I think it's important personally that if it does proceed, I think both boards need to, if they structure how it looks, I think there has to be, the examples that I've seen, there's a 6-month escape clause for either board to say, you know what, this just isn't working, and they give 6 months notice, and then it's over. And that person goes back to their original district, you know, and things move on as is, because, you know, as with anything else that we've done here, most of these big things that we've done over the last few years, going from 2 bus runs to 1, 3 principals to 2, every time we sit here and openly tell the public, you know, we're gonna try this, and we're not gonna have any shame if this doesn't work, because we've done our research. You know, we feel like we can make this work. We're gonna try it because we think it's what's best for our situation. And if it doesn't, then we'll make plans and adjust accordingly. There's no shame. I've never once had any shame to come back here to this board and open public and say, this just isn't working the way that it needs to. It was a bad idea, and we need to step back and reevaluate this. And, yeah, and it's the same thing I told you when we went from 3 principals to 2. We're still very much in that evaluative phase of what is it that we're going to need? Do we need additional support? Whether this shared service then plays out or not. You know, there's certain things in that capacity that you don't want your superintendent doing because you have your superintendent designated as a field lead for these different things. And so there's things that you have to consider with all of that. But I think if this does move forward and we try it, that we have to go into it knowing that we're going to make it do our best. You know, and I work personally. You know, I don't want to be part of anything that's effective. And, you know, make it work as best I can.
One gentleman, yes?
Andy didn't pay me to say this. I worked with Andy for a few years as administrator. If anybody can make it work, it would be Andy. I was an administrator of 2 buildings, 4 elementary schools for 7 years. It's a difficult job just at that level. And after my first year, I was ready to say, forget it, I'm just going back to the classroom. It can work. I don't envy him. I never became superintendent. My question was for the field board. I know some of them are here, and I would ask it Thursday, is why they and Waterloo are discussing this. There's probably 12 miles between the 2 board offices when they have a school district within 3 miles of them to the west, a modular school district. Have they discussed any sharing opportunities with them? I don't know. That's something they would have to discuss. I know they share treasurers, and I know in Portage County food service share. So it's work, but I would hate to see field lose the superintendent.
Can we ask, I mean, it may not, you might not be able to tell us, but why are we looking at the superintendent position for field? What happened to the superintendent?
We were not part of any of that. Our understanding is that the superintendent resigned and is going to be through July or August or something like that. But other than that, I mean, you know.
I heard that she was wonderful. I heard she was great. Why did she resign?
Also, we know the
Nobody can
situation.
tell you guys either, right?
Is right.
Well, the fact of the matter is we have an administrator that's been here 24 years, and whoever takes this office will be the 11th superintendent that's been administrator for under 24 years. So we average a year and a half or 2 years, 2.5 years for each superintendent.
And you kind of answered that whole 6 months on student throwing him in there.
So, and that's my fear, that's kind of one of my fears about even giving it a chance to work, because We have a levy that we just pulled off. We're where you guys were a year or so ago, maybe even further down the rat hole. But we have to now pass a levy with this big open question of who's our leader. So they pulled the levy off because that question's unanswered. There's not even, at this point now, I guess this is Plan A. This is the first acknowledgement we've had as field residents as this being Plan A. We don't have Plan B. That's one of the reasons why we feel it's further along than it's being publicly admitted to, because we don't have a Plan B. There hasn't been public interviews or a job search or anything like that done. So we, as we're trying to pass a levy, we have all these big giant questions that are floating, which the levy committee and the people in the community are saying, well, we probably won't pass the next levy. We're gonna probably go into this into November with a big giant question mark.
You guys have a systems problem.
What's that?
A systems problem.
Yeah, yeah, and.
We went through the same thing.
Yeah, so having a superintendent in place before that levy question has to get answered is a big step. Now, if it is a situation like this where people aren't happy with it, or people hasn't been explained to them, or it hasn't been, they haven't seen the due diligence in the actual savings, it's gonna probably get rejected by the voters in November. And that'll appear in our new board. And the new board will exercise that 6-month clause, and they won't give it the chance that, like you said, it might be inevitable. It's a terrible thing to take a first step out of the block and fail because of nobody's fault other than timing. Okay, if we wait till November, the new board has the same facts, and they have time to administer not only the plan, but then support it for 4 years, it's gonna have a better shot at succeeding. Okay, I understand shared services. We share with the guy back here, the road crew in Suffield and Atwater, Randall. Because we have to do the same, we have the same requirements from the state that you do. Wherever you can share, you share. But you always want to share where it is a win-win. And we're afraid right now that we're gonna go out, spend money, do this, and it's gonna falter because the voters aren't gonna support it.
So let me ask you, what you're saying is you're not against the idea, you're just thinking the time.
Exactly. I think all ideas have to be explored. I think you have to do due diligence. I think Kent State is doing a $100,000 investigation into shared service. Okay? That's a commitment to investigate. We don't feel like we're getting that investigation because, again, we don't have Plan B. We have one option in front of us. So for us to say and to go into this with the members who are driving it from our side not wanting to participate come November 3rd, so they're not going to be there to support their decision, we don't feel like it's being very well vetted. And it's going to be a situation that's kind of doomed. Whether it's good or not, we can't answer that. But we just haven't been given any information. And we see this in building because it's going to push the levy out, because it's going to make it hard to pass a levy when we do put it on. It doesn't seem like a good situation. I mean, the request was to extend the superintendent through this summer so we can get teacher's contract ratified, we can get a levy passed, we can get the new board member seated, and then address the superintendent issue next year. That was kind of the community's advice, but that didn't happen. So here we are now, we got all those things still happening, and we got to fill this hole at superintendent. So as a field resident, we have a lot of things to consider, and oh, by the way, they want more money. So put yourself in our shoes. I think the Waterloo residents would have a difficult time. I mean, Andy, I understand you did a great job communicating with the people to get the levy passed out here. It was a challenge out here for 7 attempts, but it got passed. We're in that same boat, but we're in the bottom of the 9th, and we just took out our starting lineup and we're starting over.
And I think that, I'm going to tell you, I probably, if your board members around in the audience, I met Kelly and Larry here for the first time today. I couldn't pick them out. I mean, I could pick Terry out. I didn't meet Terry one time. But, I think that's what they're trying to do now is that due diligence to see if this is going to work or not. And I'm sorry, Larry.
Yeah.
After you, we're going to go to Chuck, but one of you guys raised your hand.
I just wanted to say something. I'm just saying it as a field resident. We are, I don't know you, I'm sorry.
Tom.
Mr. Kelsey, Tom? we are kind of putting the cart before the horse, if you ask me. And I just want to say this about Mr. Hill. I don't really know Mr. Hill that well, but what I found out about him, I take him for our superintendent. Now, I'm just saying, I think for us to be concerned whether he can do the job or not, I mean, granted, we have to figure that out as board members, as your board members, as a community. But I really think Mr. Hill, and I don't know him that well, but what I found out about him and investigated, so to speak, I really feel that if he didn't think that he could give it his college try, he wouldn't do it. I mean, I would have to think that if it would work, he'd be the guy for the job. That's just my first impression. So when we're all talking about trying to make the decision kind of for Mr. Hill, I kind of think that I would just throw it into his court and say, run with it. I would give him that opportunity, and I would think that he could do it. Now, whether he does or not, that 6-month period is a good idea. But, I mean, that's all I'm saying. That's my 2 cents worth. I think sometimes for us to try to figure out whether Mr. Hill can do the job, that's good, don't get me wrong. But really, I think if anybody could pull it off, he could probably do it. And again, he's not, I've never even had lunch with the man. I'm just saying that from my first impression of him.
Mr. Alderson?
Yeah. As a Waterloo resident, we won't give him up. You might take him, but what I'd like to say is I've spent the last few years in the health system here in Akron, consolidating 2 hospitals with the administrative staff, the medical staff, the leadership and everything. And it was a step that you took that, gosh, is this going to work right? And pull it together and make it work. But what I would encourage the group to do is that the boards would have to come together. Yeah, you may have some people that turn over and end up with new boards, but there's only a few people that turn over each year. The entire board doesn't turn over. And part of that is so that you have some consistency of what happens and what's going on and what's in the future. But this can't just be a superintendent as a shared role. This has to be a due diligence of your entire administrative structure. And with all respect to Matt and Tracy, it's Matt and Tracy and Andy here, and that's it. And I think Brian pointed that out earlier, is that now if you take half of that away from Andy's perspective, you've only got 2.5 people here, as opposed to the 3 that they have, and they're already down 1. It can't be you can't go into it and look at, we're going in this because it's going to create savings. The savings is the benefit out of doing it. You go together and you do it because it's the right thing to do. It's the right thing to do for both groups. And again, if you go through the due diligence, the timing's not right because the community may not feel it's right, then that's one thing, you turn and you walk away from it. But if it is the right thing to do, again, the benefit, the cost benefit is derived from it. It's not you're going into it to save costs. The benefit is that cost savings derive because you did the right thing, because there was an opportunity to come together, because the person, the administrative group, but again, without that due diligence of looking at the whole administrative group, back to the point, if you're going to hire another, you say you have to have a principal here, and we end up with 3.5 administrators versus the 3 that we have now, we've not solved anything here. And so it has to be the right thing to do, and an entire engineering of how are you going to administrate your school districts in both groups. But I would encourage this as a starting point. Do the due diligence, look at it. If it's not right, walk away from it. If it's right, then keep going with it.
Matt had his hand up.
Well, my main question is this. Maria, do you have 4 more questions?
Yeah, I have 4 more areas. We've talked about contract termination with the 6th out. If there's a conflict of interest between both boards, communication by the shared superintendent and evaluation of the shared superintendent. Those are my topics for the month.
Okay, so in light of that, in light of hearing that we have 4 more topics to discuss, and in light of what Chuck said, and giving them an opportunity to do due diligence, and also with the understanding that the Waterloo community may not be able to go to field on Thursday to hear some of the responses from our board members, I would recommend that maybe we move forward on those other topics to hear some of the responses from our end to the people who aren't going to be able to go to the field later in the week. Just so we kind of have some information, so we can continue to entertain the idea of, what might this look like, where is everybody coming from, so we can kind of be an educated populace.
Before you do, I'd like to ask one question. We talked about a 6-month period to evaluate. What do you think the timeline is, since this is day 1 of the study? What do you think the timeline would be for your district and our district to come together and put the facts on the table and see if we should go in that direction? Our big concern is that we were ready to sign contracts. I said at the beginning, I'm kind of comforted to know that this is just a starting point to look at the process. Do you have some kind of timeline in terms of what it would be to lay that process out?
I personally know, but what I'll tell you is, it started with Terry reaching out to Steve, asking Steve if there was an interest. Our board gave me permission to go over and have a conversation with the field board. And prior to that, I had told our board, and I told the field board the same thing. I thought that the next step, if it was worth continuing, was to have a joint board meeting. And then it was decided between the boards to have 2, one in each community. And I think we just have to keep going step by step from there. I don't know what that time frame is. Obviously, if something has to be in place by August, then, there's some kind of decisions, I guess, have to be made at some point in the near future. If there's not going to be somebody in that role starting August 1. But as far as when this would be, we don't know. We haven't discussed that next step. We wanted to see where this discussion took us over the course of these 2 meetings, and then kind of plan from there after they've had a chance to see if it matches up, listening to both. And I can only speak on behalf of
Sure, and I understand that, and I would speak for the field district. I think our people would feel kind of comforted if they know there's this little period of time to study, because I don't think we've had that. And Mr. Hill, I am impressed with what you've been saying. Maybe you are the guy, and maybe this is the process. But I think if we do the study and allow the people to have all their input, we might come to some agreement in some short period of time. But that's not the issue. It's not Mr. Hill, and it's not this Board of Education. It's that process of studying. Like I said, we came in here without having any information about this. We thought, and I'll speak for myself, but I think it reflects our community. We thought things were going to be laid out in the contract, and we're going to have to decide soon what's going to happen. So appreciate what you've been doing. I compliment the board one more time.
Gino, how many people when I was in school said I would grow up to be useless?
Right.
Who said that?
I don't remember one.
Hey, he's getting a lot older too.
I got a question for the mediator. Is there a state law, or what's the law say about half the superintendent? I mean, obviously, yeah, I'm sure you have to have one, but they're talking about if you have to have it by August 1st, they want to wait until November to get the levy passed.
Well, we could, there could be an interim.
Yeah, you can have an interim.
Okay,
The current superintendent at Field, her contract expires, ends on July 31st. And every superintendent contract runs August 1st to July 31st. That's just the term of the superintendent contract. So if Field doesn't have a superintendent, I'm not going to speak for the board, this is just my impression.
Right.
If Field doesn't have a superintendent in place by August 1st, then they would probably look to get an interim superintendent until they have somebody permanently in place. And I believe that's, it was before I was out in Portage County, but I believe that's what happened before as well. I think they brought in the county superintendent as interim.
Is there a time limit on that? They have so much time if they bring that term in to get one, or?
No, it's just up to the board as how long they want to keep the interim in there and, they want to navigate it, so. Should we continue on with the other topics? We talked about contract termination with the 6 months out, so I'm gonna move on to the next area. So the next topic I have is evaluation of the shared superintendent. What does that look like? Does each district evaluate their superintendent separately? by their own and establish their own goals for the superintendent? Or is there a joint evaluation between both boards, or is there a little bit of both? It's kind of, what are your thoughts?
I think we would want to continue to evaluate our superintendent independent of any other school district that we currently do, just same process in place.
I agree, because, I mean, for us, Andy is our superintendent. We're not involved in, Field should be in charge of evaluating him as their superintendent.
Each district's gonna have their own goals
Yeah.
set for that superintendent based on the dynamics of the district, okay? The next topic I have is communication by the shared superintendent, which I think is a really important topic. So how is he gonna communicate with both boards and the community? How will this be done and the frequency in which it will be done? Any thoughts on that?
Currently, we're updated at least every week. Our policy has always been, all the years I've been on the board, we get a weekly update every week. And in the interim, if any board member calls and requests information, that same information goes to all the boards. So every board member gets the same information. And that's, I would expect that to continue. And then, of course, excuse me, we talk, as things come up, we talk, like today, I got this surprise call at 2 o'clock. So, yes.
So I want to give Andy a chance to talk about communication, what you do right now to communicate with the Waterloo board and how you see that playing out if you were to be superintendent of both districts.
I think it would be, I think it would have to be, I would use the same model I currently use, because the feedback that I had on what I currently do has been positive. But I would also tailor that, I guess, to the needs of it. But one thing, and I told this to the field board when I was over there meeting with them that time, you know, what I tell one, I tell five. And, you know, unless the board has specifically told me, only communicate this to the board president or something. Everything that I, you know, if I make one phone call, I make five. You know, if I'm sending out an email, sending to each board member so that they have that same information. I try to operate, you know, outside of sharing ideas and kind of visioning where we're going in consultation with the board. I try to operate under, I don't want them to be surprised. I don't want to be surprised myself, and I prefer that they're not either. There's always things that happen that will be a surprise that I can't anticipate. Anything that I think is something that they need to know, communicate that right away. And with our community, I think communication is key. Especially, we haven't found, we keep working with how do we communicate with the broad population of 1,000 residents here. And I think the communication with school families, pretty good with email listserv that we have. Do a lot of it now, phone calls to the community, different things. But we always strive for doing better. Spend a lot of time dealing with communication and making sure that people know what's going on, because it's important. It's important for the board to know and understand that they can trust them and give them the information that they need. And it's just as important for the community to know that things that happen here are open, straightforward, that you have access to whatever it is that they need. And just keep trying to do things.
We've had a lot of help with communication with the KPO, PTO, and then, you know, some folks got together and created this community action committee, which is, I mean, and that's just blossomed into, it's gone crazy, you know, and, I mean, if you don't know what's going on, if you live in this community and you don't know what's going on, he's done everything but rent a Goodyear plane. So, yeah. So, or rent a plane and pull a banner. So, I mean, it's just, communication is just,
But see, you know, I appreciate all the nice comments people are making tonight about me, but I will say, all of this stuff takes a team to do it. This really is not one person. This is a team thing. And, you know, I'm lucky to have a lot of good people to work with and a lot of community support that are willing to help get the word out there and help with all of that. And you know, without that, we wouldn't be able to do half half of what we do. So this very much is a team effort, everything that's done here.
Okay. The final topic I have on my list is conflict of interest between both districts. When there's a conflict of interest between both districts, obviously Andy can't represent the interests of both districts at the same time, so he would step out. And so in my research, what I've seen other shared superintendent arrangements districts do is have the board presidents represent the interests of their respective districts in that particular situation. And so, like Andy, can you give an example of where that may come about, where you have to step out?
Yeah, we've had situations, just as an example, where we'll get a district will appoint a student to us in the system, which means then that we're the district financially responsible. And maybe we have some court paperwork that says otherwise, so we have to go through a dispute resolution process. So in that type of situation, if that ever happened between the two districts, I would have to recuse myself from doing that and allow, if we went with what Maria suggested, that's how we would handle those. And that happens very rarely, but there are times when that stuff really occurs.
We just want to have a plan in place in case that were to happen. And it doesn't necessarily need to be the board presidents. It could be like the next administrator in the lineup at each district.
Or it could be like a board president and a treasurer.
Right. Yeah,
We appoint
absolutely.
however we want to.
However you want to shape the agreement, but that was just something that stuck out at me that, you want to have that vetted out before we go in and try to draft an agreement. And I know we talked about contract termination. One clause I saw in one of the agreements that I looked at states as follows, and I think it's a really good clause that we should consider if we do pursue this, putting this in the agreement, is if at any time the districts determine that the shared superintendent arrangement does not serve the best interests of the students, parents, communities, or employees of both districts, the districts, in conjunction with the shared superintendent, will explore alternative arrangements, which may include a return to a more traditional employment arrangement for the superintendent. So in this clause, you're giving both districts an opportunity to evaluate whether this is working in conjunction with the community, parents, students, employees of the district. And I really like this clause. I think it's fair. And I think it'd be very helpful to have something like this or similar to this in the agreement as well.
And from our standpoint, and I'm sure you guys would say the same thing, in the event the agreement doesn't work out, he would come back to water.
Do you see that question?
Yeah, sorry.
I'm Deb, I'm from Field. I've lived here for about 5 years, but I'm a retired curriculum director, just to adventure curriculum director. And so I'm kind of coming from this at a different angle. I understand that there's still a part of this. Very concerned about Mr. Hill being held accountable for all the changes that are coming down with course standards and the evaluation plan. You're going to have to evaluate every teacher every year, whether they're there 1 year, whether they're, so there are so many things that are going to pull existing administrators into the classroom with the evaluation process, like one of your residents had mentioned. And those are all good things. I mean, I'm not saying that those are bad things, but I'm just wondering and asking both maybe boards if this could be an exploratory time that we look into some things for 6 months to a year, while all of this settles from the state with the evaluation process, the new course standards. I don't know whether Waterloo's done any mapping with the new course standards and how the instruction has to change based on those new course standards. And, the teachers need to be familiar with that. I mean, just off the top of my head, in 10th grade biology, it's down into the 8th grade now. So those kids are going to be taking 8th grade science that was 10th grade biology a year ago. So you need to understand that those new core standards, they have elevated the expectations of these kids. And I'm not saying that that's wrong, but I'm really concerned that Mr. Hill, as good as you are, and we've been hearing all of that, is it physically possible for him to be able to monitor both Waterloo and Field to the level of monitoring that we need to make sure things are getting done. That's just a concern. Especially the first year, that's what I'm saying, this timing might just be like, you know, with the exploratory, with the services, with the copy machines. And I'd start little and work up, rather than start at the top and then work down. You know, okay, I'm sorry. But, so I think we can help both school districts with those types of things. But right now, with what's coming down with the state, I'm just so concerned that we're so worried about money, and we should be, because you're not gonna have a district if you don't have, if you're not fiscally responsible. But we have to think about, is it fair to these kids? The tests that they're gonna take in 2014 they look so different. I don't know whether anybody's seen what those tests look. I'm sure Mr. Hill has, maybe Matt has too. You see the level of difficulty of the questions that are gonna be in that test. The state tells us, and I've been involved in some organizations where we've done some investigation and research on this, a child who is proficient now will not be proficient with the new tests. And yet, then we're going to have a third grade reading guarantee. The children that score advanced and accelerated on the existing tests now will probably just be proficient. That's how the level.
Why do you think the state's making this big push to do that?
The new core standards didn't come from educators, okay? And I'm not saying that's a bad thing either. I think what happened, the governors got together. That's how this all came about. The governors got together and said, with business people, and said, why aren't our kids ready to do what you need them to do? And the governors, you know, scratching their head and saying, what do we got to do on this? And so that's when they said, well, when they come in and they're on an entry-level job, they need to be doing dit, and they're not able to do that. We got to do all this remediation. We got to do all this training. It's just the same issues that we're having at the academic, the college levels. Our kids are coming in and they're not ready. And we want to compete with other countries. So the level of difficulty is so much higher in math and science, in social studies and language arts. It's so much more critical thinking that our kids need. It's not going to be fill in the blank rote memorization. They're going to have to read something, analyze it, interpret it, and then apply it. Those are the three things that they got to do. And if we don't get our kids ready, and Mr. Hill and Matt or whoever isn't able to monitor this and make sure that this gets done, we're both going to be, both districts will be at a loss.
Okay, thank you. Larry?
You know, I'm sorry. I was supposed to kind of lay low this evening, and I am. But the woman that just spoke, you know, we all as educators in the room and board members ought to find out, truly find out what Common Core is. Because that's kind of what she's talking about. And I'm telling you, in my opinion, it's coming down the pipe. And if we don't find out exactly what's going on here, we're all going to be surprised. I'll just be quiet with that.
You can go to on the ODE website. I'm sure Andy and Matt, they've all done it. Well, I think it's also.
We've done mapping.
Yeah,
We've spent a lot of energy
on
in
mapping
and all those things. I believe about half of all of our meetings and that address mapping.
Well, I think it's a lot of the left hand not knowing what the right hand's doing with the state. You know, the state, they have some good ideas with education and all of this, just like the third grade. You know, that's wonderful. It's not a bad program, but they want us to do it with no money. So just like, you know, they want us to do shared services because it might be a good idea, but then they want you to have so much going on that you need a superintendent there the entire time. So we see all this coming and we know this is all happening, but, you know. Right, and the other thing is, I mean, I've been on the board for 10 years. I have never been told, okay, we can spend money. We've always been cut. So when this came up, the first thing in our minds is, okay, well, this might save us a little, as a residual of it. But it's just, and as far as timing for field, I know it's hard, but at the same time, the state may at some point come in, you may hire someone, and in 3 years, they may come in and say, okay, they're out of here because we're going to combine you guys. So I think the timing of it is bad, but at the same time, you're not going to have a superintendent, so maybe the only time that people can do this kind of stuff is whenever your superintendent's contract is up, because that's whenever you're able to bring someone else in. So I think that's why, at this point in time, is why the conversation even began, because you need a superintendent, and we've been told that by the state that this is one of the
We
ways.
have that opportunity for 2.5 years.
We don't want that opportunity.
The thing is, a lot of the things that we're going through, the same things that Field's going through, no different than any other school district. There is some apprehension in that it's two different districts. We could put both our districts together, and there's plenty of superintendents out there that run much bigger districts. It's all about leadership and best practices and a good support team. I'm a little bit biased. Andy has all of those. And I would say you would be hard pressed to go out and get somebody of Andy's caliber.
You're right. You're absolutely right. The problem is if it's predicated around Andy Hill and Andy Hill moves on, then we're both in it. If we create a monster that only one person can control, then we're in trouble. And that's part of the due diligence. And that's not to say Andy, I mean, I've heard nothing but good things, okay? But part of it is, if he's the only one that can run it, then he's either trapped here or we're putting ourselves in.
A good manager will always have succession planning. If you're not doing that, then you're not a very good manager. And Andy's not a one-man operation. I don't care what he's doing. He's got a heck of a support team here with the principals and with his administrative staff. And if you're looking for a leader that doesn't have that, you're getting half an employee. A good leader is always going to have a good team. And he's going to put in those mechanisms in place that it's not about him or what his particular goals are. It's putting the district first. Andy's shown that time and time again, right along with our administrative team and with our staff and teachers and support staff all the way down the line. I think it starts with that leadership at the top, and his influence and his walking the walk makes it possible for these other support systems to come together to work as a whole. So.
Several of you have mentioned that this is coming from the state, and I'm hoping that you can clarify that as I read the OSBA updates as they're sent out and the ODE notices from the superintendent of state. And I don't recall ever reading that this was a big push that was going on in the state. I understand it was a class that was offered at the OSBA
It's nothing more than a
conference.
recommendation.
From?
From